My parents, they always taught us you never allow another human being to dictate what you can and can't do.
Love
If
it.
there's something that you want to do in life, get to work, make it happen.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the One Percenter Podcast. We have a great show for you today. I'm excited for today's guest.
My man JP.
He's a stud, guys. So he's a Navy SEAL. He's works at Echelon Front, and he's just an incredible leader, an incredible guy, and we're honored to have
Well,
him.
you say echelon front, like you gotta talk about echelon, like you gotta go more details. You can't just say echelon front like it's nothing. Right?
We'll get into it. But thank you so much, JP, for being on the show.
I appreciate you guys having me as a guest. Looking forward to our time today.
Awesome, man. So why don't you just give us a little bit of background about where you come from, and how you got into the SEALs? Because if you don't know, guys, he was a former Navy SEAL. So let's talk to us about that journey.
Yeah, so I grew up in Northern California, in Sacramento, California, and I grew up playing Navy SEALs. Like, I wanted to be a Navy SEAL ever since I was a little kid. It's just something that I was just completely infatuated with. My brother Corey and I, who's one of my best friends, we used to play Navy SEALs together all the time. My little sister, feel bad for her because she was a hostage that we'd have to tie up and then go plan a mission to go rescue, right? And so, like, we were always, incorporating, her into it, our friends and family. It was just, it's hard to describe. It was just something I absolutely loved. I could not get enough information on it. I just had this sense that I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to be in the military. I was drawn towards it. My dad's dad served in the Navy in World War II. He was he was a farmer from Nebraska. I say an old farmer, but when he went in the military, he was 16 years old, right? So because World War II was going on, and I had his mom sign an age waiver so that he could leave the farm and go serve. My mom's dad, he flew in the Army Air Corps, so that was before we had the Air Force. So he was a pilot in the Army Air Corps. He was a bomber pilot. He did, I think close to 30 years in the military. He flew in World War II, Korean War, Vietnam, and then after he got out, he went on to work for some departments of the government for a very long time, doing some pretty cool stuff. And so I just never heard a lot of stories from either of them about their time, but always just had this sense of pride from them serving, and then other aunts and uncles and cousins that served in the military. So it was just something I was always around, always thinking about. And, I went in the military right after high school. I was actually, last couple weeks of high school, I went to a Navy recruiter, and went in. I had a cast on my hand. I'd gotten into a fight at a party. I broke, just broke some bones in my hand, and it was in a cast. And I remember walking in the recruiter station and them, laughing at me when I told them I wanted to be a Navy SEAL, right? I went in and they're like, what do you want? This is before 9/11, so there was not this big need for people to be recruiting heavy, right? And I just told them I want to be a Navy SEAL, and I remember all of them laughing, and I remember how that made me feel because, my parents, they always taught us you never allow another human being to dictate what you can and can't do. If there's something that you want to do in life, get to work, make it happen, right? And I just remember all that when, they're all kind of laughing at me, and, this one older senior chief in the back corner, he kind of stands up and he said, hey, listen up, kid, like two things. One, the Navy's not going to touch you with that cast on your hand. We're like, there's nothing we can do to start the process. And to the Navy SEAL wannabe recruiter, he's not going to be here until Thursday. So if you want to come back in 2 days, have at it, right? So I was there on a Tuesday, and the whole wannabe recruiter thing, like, that pissed me off too, because I wasn't going in there to just talk about something. I actually wanted to do it. And I remember when I left, I just made the decision that was exactly what I was going to do. And so I went home that night. I went back to work, obviously. I had to finish off my shift, and then I went back home, and my dad asked me how work was, and I told him, I was like, hey, it's good. I want to join the Navy. I'm going to join the Navy to become a Navy SEAL. but they won't do anything with this cast on my hand. They said I can't start the military. And my dad's like, okay, like how soon do you want to go? And I said, as soon as possible. You know, I just knew it was like one of those things, and the whole like they were challenging me thing. And I also know myself, like I wanted to go do it right now. Like while I wanted to at the highest level, it was time to get to work. And my dad's like, okay, hey, go in the bathroom, turn on the bath water and start soaking your cast into the water. I'm like, okay. So I go in there, I start doing it. My dad comes back from the garage with some tools, and we cut my cast off. I don't recommend doing that only after like 11 days of having a cast on.
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming.
Stuff was just still like, it was hurting, man. But you know, it was a step towards accomplishing my goal. Yes. What was it painful? Absolutely. Was it inconvenient? Yeah. I couldn't even grip a pen to like write my name, right? That's how weak my hand was. But we had to make it work. I had to get going on that right then and there, because too many times people, they failed to take action. They failed to seize the opportunity because it's not perfect.
Yeah.
How many times are things absolutely perfect for you in life?
So true.
Maybe 2% of the time, right? Maybe. It requires us to take action, and you know, that's just what I needed to do. And you know, my dad knew that as well. My dad was a hard ass. You know, he was a hard working guy. He always pushed us, and he knew that, okay, my hand's going to be sore. It wasn't like a compound break or anything. I broke my hand being stupid, getting into a fight. So, you know, we were going to work through that. And that summer, you know, my dad had me working construction for him so that we could help strengthen my hand and we could spend time together before I left. And it was awesome. It was a good summer, and that kind of got me into the military. And I left on September 5th, 2001. And, you know, 6 days later, 9/11 happened when I was in boot camp.
Wow.
What is that mindset like shift look like? Like how did the atmosphere change in there after 9/11? I'm curious.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because it was an absolute shift, obviously, right? It was a shift across the world when that happened. And I just remember being in boot camp, and I remember standing by my rack, which is your bed, right? That's what they call a bed in the military. Is I was standing by my rack. My other bunkmate was there. You know, we were just talking about something, and I remember the door like flings open, and the senior chief petty officer comes in and says, "Our nation's been attacked. We might be going to war." And then walked out, and we're all like, "What?" Right? And then we got a little more information, and you know, like, hey, you know, this is what had happened, and there was a lot of fear and uncertainty. Like that was a big shift. Is, you know, all these people who are in the military, and now war is a very real thing. Now, granted, we're in the Navy, right? So most of the regular Navy isn't going like to war like the Marines are going to be, right? You know what I mean? Like the Marines and soldiers, they're on the front line. They're headed over right away. But I just remember looking around and seeing just fear and seeing people just terrified. And for me, you know, I always thought the Navy SEALs were at war all the time, right? I always figured we were doing something all across the world. So for me, that wasn't like this big, like fear, because that's what I wanted. Like I wanted to be in the SEAL teams to go do that, right? But it was just a moment of reality of like, okay, this is really happening. I hope you're ready. I just remember thinking like, I hope you're ready, because I spent that whole summer getting myself ready physically and mentally for this program. And now it was one of those things. It's like, man, this is a completely different reality when you're talking about like our nation being attacked and you know we're going to war. So and I was only 18 at the time.
That's crazy, man.
Like that's me 2 years ago. Can't imagine going to war. But
Wow.
What happened to like the training and everything like that? Did you kind of go to a different place? Like I wanted this to happen, but now it's actually happening, or what was that like for you personally?
Yeah, so that's another really good question, and I like how you phrased that uniquely. Did I want this to happen? You know, did I want this to happen? No. But did I want it to happen? Yes. I want, you know what I mean? Like, that's what you want. You don't join the SEAL teams to be like, oh, I hope I never have to do anything, right? Like, no, okay, not everyone, but most SEALs join the SEAL teams because they want to go to war. They want to get in gunfights. They want to kill bad people. Because I can promise you, there's a lot of bad people that need to be killed because they're doing evil things. And this isn't me just being psycho saying, hey, I'd like to kill people. No, that's not it. What I like is evil people no longer existing. Because you're talking about a group of people that were murdering, torturing, and just doing horrific things to men, women, and children that didn't comply with their thoughts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're talking some horrible, horrible things. And it wasn't just a Muslim versus Christian type of thing. It was like, oh, you're not going to let us use your house to ambush the Americans? Cool. We're going to rape your family. We're going to torture them. And then we're going to kill everybody but you so that you can let everybody else know that you're going to let us use your stuff here. And that's what they were doing in Ramadi. Like, that is not an exaggeration. That is what they were doing in Ramadi in the 2005 timeframe and 2006 when we deployed there with Task Unit Bruiser. And then what they were doing in Afghanistan was horrible, right? And so there's horrible things happening, and there takes a group of people that just want to go against that, and it was just one of those things where it was horrible that it happened, but I was happy to have been in the running to go do something about it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
So that was one of those things, like going through training, that I just was always in the back of my mind. Like, how I never had the mindset of like, I'm going to go see what it's like. I never had that mindset, because when I was in boot camp, they made like the SEAL instructors that they're called dive motivators, right? So they're SEALs that are at boot camp that run the prep course for guys that want to become a Navy SEAL. And they came in, they dropped everybody down into the push-up position, and they're like, all right, where's all my SEAL wannabes, right? Where's all my SWCC wannabes, my EOD wannabes? And so all these kids like stand up, and I stayed in the push-up position. And they're going through the list of names that they have for guys that have the contract to try out, to even just do the screen test, right? And most people don't even pass the screen test at boot camp, right? To even be able to go try. And so they run through the name, and they're like, Dinnell. And I'm like, who ya? Like, I'm in the push-up position, right? They're like, what? Like, why didn't you stand up? Something along those lines, right? Like, and I said, this is a bold move. I said, I'm not a SEAL wannabe. I'm a SEAL gonna be. And they're like, okay. And then, of course, they smoked me, like, do the smoke session, a little beat down session. And, it was just, I always had that mindset. So then 9/11 happens. And there's no way I'm going to allow some pain or discomfort or, just being tired and fatigued allow me to make a decision that would pull me away from that. And that's what I knew I needed to go do.
Yeah, I love that, man. Like, and I'm curious, what was your experience of BUD/S? Because we've had a lot of SEALs on the show, and some of them say like physically it wasn't that much. It was just the endurance, and it was just mentally. Or what was your experience like in BUD/S?
Yeah, it's 100% a mental thing. Obviously, the more the better in shape you are going there, the easier it's going to be, on the physical side. But you have to understand, BUD/S is 100% a mental thing, because there are people that show up where they barely pass the screen test, and they're able just to continue pushing through all the evolutions, and they make it through training, right? I mean, it's amazing what the human body can do when your mind is in the right place. You can condition your body to do amazing things. Your mind is what's going to quit, right? And I saw that happening in BUD/S all the time. And very few times your body actually quits before your mind does. And you got to understand, if that happens, the instructors are smart enough to realize that. Like, if you physically can't go, but you're mentally trying to stay in the game and you keep going, they're gonna work with you, right? It's the ones that quit and make up like all these little excuses, and that's why we use the cold water. The cold water is an equalizer, right? And so we put people in the ocean, and you put them in the ocean for a very long time, and people quit. But I want you to think about this. Have you guys ever heard the phrase, fatigue makes cowards of us all?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so when we're tired and exhausted, do we make really good life decisions?
Nope.
No, we do stuff that doesn't make sense. We say stuff that doesn't make sense, right? And so what the instructors would do is we'd get done with a really hard physical evolution. The guys are smoked, they're tired, they're exhausted, they're beat down, right? We've been doing log PT and boat PT and running and getting wet and sandy. That gets old over time, right? I don't care how good a shape you are in, it gets old. When you go to physical exhaustion where you can't do anything, you physically can't do anything, right? And you're still trying to do it. And what they do is they're like, all right, everyone link arms, face the surf, forward march. And they walk you out to it and they just make you sit there, right? And then they play games. They'll stop right before you get to the water. They're like, and stop. And they just make you look at the ocean, right? And then they'll make you go in a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And then they make you sit down and you have to link arms and you're floating in the surf zone. So the waves are crashing over your face. The water's going, that cold water goes in your ears, throws off your whole equilibrium, right? And guys are just like coughing up the water. They're getting it in their mouth and their nose. And, you're not allowed, you can't go like this because you're linked arms. So you're just eating every single wave, right? And what happens is people quit. And people quit because they're tired of just dealing with that and they're fatigued, they're tired, and that's when they quit. So the instructors use that for two reasons. One, to weed out the mentally weak. Like if you can't sit in the ocean next to another guy who's doing the same thing as you and you're going to quit, you don't need to be going overseas into combat, right? You're going to, because I can promise you combat, actual combat, not just being deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan, but being in combat, gunfights, patrols, overwatches, that is way more exhausting than buds will ever be. All right? And so they use that as a filter to get rid of those that are going to quit. And if they quit, it doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It's just like, okay, hey, cool. You don't want to be here. We'll just move on to the next, right? But they also do it to help with the recovery. What do most college and professional sports teams do after a really hard training cycle? They sit in an ice bath. Guess what? The Pacific Ocean is pretty freaking cold. So it's very similar to the ice bath. So you have to switch your mindset. So whenever you're going in the ocean, I would just tell myself, this is for recovery, right? I just remember it clicked one time. We got out of the ocean. I felt good. And I was like, well, that was like an ice bath. It's the same thing I did back home when I was training that summer. I would go train down by the river and I would go sit in the cold water in the river for my recovery. And I would practice my breath holds in that cold water. I would swim in the river. I would go down to the bottom of the river on a breath hold and pull myself upstream, practicing in that cold water. And I always felt good afterwards. So it just clicked going through that training. There is not one human that could go through that training without those sessions in the surf zone for recovery. So they do that to help our bodies recover, but they do it to weed out those that are going to quit. And it was just a game going through buds. You have to have fun with it. It is a mental game that if you can switch your mindset, you're going to have fun. And my mindset going through buds was, I get to do this. That's what I told myself every single day. I get to do this. I get to go for an ocean run, an ocean swim. I get to go for a 4-mile run, right? And that would help shift my mindset to make it to where that was enjoyable and it was something that I looked forward to.
Yeah. So then you're deployed. You're in combat, you're in Ramadi and everything like that. Talk to us about some of the biggest lessons that you learned like that translates to anything really. Because success in the military, success in athletics, success in one thing, those principles are still the same in everything else. So talk to us about what being in Ramadi, what being in gunfights taught you.
Well, the most important lesson that being in Ramadi and gunfights taught me is that leadership is the most important thing. Okay. Like leadership is the absolute most important thing in any aspect of your life. And what people confuse is when they hear leadership, they're thinking like Jocko, our task unit commander in Ramadi, right? Or Seth Stone, the platoon commander. But when I'm talking about leadership, I'm talking about individual leadership. Individuals taking ownership over everything that they're supposed to do for the team's success. And this is something that goes up and down the chain of command. Leadership at every level, right? And then, humility, ownership, and teamwork were huge lessons that we learned in combat. I mean, there is nothing more humbling than bringing one of your best friends home in a casket with an American flag draped over it. There's nothing more humbling than that, right? Because combat, the lessons that we learned apply to every aspect of our lives. But the things that happen in combat, some of those you can't take back. You can't take back those mistakes, right? I mean, it's life and death at times. And so, combat is extremely humbling because, if you make one mistake, not only could you get yourself killed, but you can get your teammates killed. Yeah. Right. And that's why teamwork is the most important thing that there is out there. Yeah. Second to leadership. Like, obviously you have to have leadership. You have to be able to step up and lead. But without teamwork, everything's going to fall apart. And we had to find a way to work with those soldiers and Marines when we were in Ramadi to get the job done, because they told us Ramadi was an unwinnable situation. Think about that. The military, our government, the media was telling us that Ramadi was an unwinnable situation when we were deploying over there. That's how bad it was. There is, so the area of Ramadi that we were operating in was about 15 square miles with a population of over 400,000 people. And there was 4,000 to 5,000 enemy fighters in that area. So, I mean, it was horrible. Like I told you, what these just horrible people were doing to innocent families, I mean, it was disgusting. And we had to find a way to work together, right? And that's why I said teamwork next to leadership, I feel, is the most important thing, because without teamwork, everything falls apart. There's no way we could have done what we did. And when I say we, I mean Americans, not the SEALs, but soldiers, Marines, and sailors working together. There's no way that would have worked in Ramadi if we wouldn't have found a way to break down the silos and work together.
So then talk to us about leadership. I'm sure you had some bad leaders in there, and I'm sure you had some amazing ones. Can you talk to us about a couple of those differences and what really puts those that are the best above everybody else?
Humility. Humility is the difference between a good leader and a bad leader, right? We all have egos. Our ego is what drives us, right? Like, we work out so that we can be healthy, but we also want to be strong, right? We also want to look good, right? And we have, we wear nicer clothes. We have, our egos drive us. There's nothing wrong with an ego, right? That's the way God created us. We have egos. It drives us, it pushes us. But what the problem is when bad leaders do not have the ability to check their ego. And that means that they can't listen to anybody, right? The difference between ego and confidence is your ability to listen to other people's input. And Jocko was a phenomenal leader. He would listen to everybody's input. It didn't matter if you were brand new or if you're on your 10th deployment. He would listen, he would absorb it, he would take in that information, and he would help make a decision that was best for the team. Good leaders know how to communicate. They know how to communicate, they know how to listen, and they know how to actually empower other leaders to be able to step up and lead as well, right? And so bad leaders, they don't know how to communicate, right? And they get upset because they think their way is the only way. They think that their way is the right way, right? And bad leaders, they don't build up junior leaders because they're afraid that somebody is going to step up and take their position or job over time. If you're irreplaceable, you're unpromotable.
True.
I love that.
I love that too.
Yeah.
That is so great.
So talk to us about what if you're not the guy in charge? What if you're not Jocko? What if you're not, the platoon leader, whoever it is? What if you're new, you're brand new? How does leadership still apply to him?
Well, you still are in charge of stuff, right? Like your gear, your department, your individual actions. Like, you're a part of a team. You have to be responsible for what you can control, right? And leadership is a skill, thankfully, right? Because I wasn't born a natural great leader. I don't call myself a great leader. I'm constantly learning and trying to improve. And, I wish I could go back to when I was 22, 23 years old. When I deployed to Ramadi, I just turned 23 years old. man, I made some stupid mistakes, right? And that wasn't my first deployment. My first deployment, I was 2021. And, it's just, you make stupid mistakes when you're young and immature. And, but, over time, I've learned about leadership and how you can improve it. And, leadership is accountability, responsibility, and standards. So even if you are that new person at the lowest level, I was the youngest and most junior ranking guy in task unit cruiser. And Jocko pulled me aside one time when we were doing training. He said, hey, I need you to step up and lead. I need you to be more aggressive. I need you to push these guys. I need you to take ownership. So if you're the youngest, most junior ranking guy in your organization or girl in your organization, you can step up and lead. You step up and lead by building relationships, by, helping other people achieve what they need to achieve to accomplish the goal for the team. You work on your communication. You work on getting clarification from your leadership up the chain of command, right? When your leadership asks you to do a task, if you're not 100% clear, you ask for clarification in a respectful manner, right? And so, if Sam is asking me to go do a task and I'm not 100% familiar, I'm going to say, hey, Sam, just real quick, man, could you explain this part of it? Because for whatever reason, I can't grasp that. I'm confused, and I want to make sure I'm clear before I go forward and start working on a task, right? So if I do it that way, it's not confrontational. I'm not asking Sam, why do you want me to do that? That's different, right? That's more of a challenging type of thing. And that's the mistake that people make, is when they ask to go do something, they're like, why? And what do people say? Because I told you so. Right? Because they feel like they're being challenged. And that's the worst thing that you can do as a leader and as a father or a mother, right? If somebody ever asks you, well, why? And you say, because I told you so, realize you are failing as an individual, because that means that you can't explain what you're asking them to do. So even when I was the youngest and most junior ranking guy, I still had to get clarification. I still had to communicate and build relationships up, right? Your attitude is contagious. And so you can influence up and down the chain of command and across with your actions, right? And so, you need to, that's why I said leadership is accountability, responsibility, and standards. Just you're accountable for your actions, right? And so you're accountable for getting your job done. Do the work, get the job done. Do it without being hassled. Do it ahead of schedule. Do it without complaining. Do it with a good attitude. Like you want to be promoted. You want to work up within your organization. Well, then you have to go above and beyond. Show people that you're responsible. When they give you a little bit of responsibility, don't screw it up. Go above and beyond to prove people that you are a responsible individual. And make sure you are going above and beyond the standards. People think that if they just hit the minimal standards, everything's going to be okay. That is a half-ass attitude that will get you nothing in life.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching the interview so far. One of the keys to my success has always been productivity and time management. And now I have a video for you so how you can increase your productivity and really start getting stuff done. So click somewhere below here and message me the word time. I'm going to send you my free video training so you can take your productivity to the next level. Now let's get back to the interview.
They're minimal standards for a reason. That's a baseline. Like nowadays, you want to go into the SEAL teams, people are like, well, I can pass a screen test. I'm like, good luck. That's a baseline. There are people crushing those numbers right now. And you have to go above and beyond with the standards. You want to be successful in life? Look at anybody that's successful in life. Do you think they became successful for doing the minimal standards for whatever they've done in their life?
Dude, it's simple.
I mean, it's simple, but nobody does it. I wanted you to talk about decentralized command and what does that mean? I know we read it in the book, Extreme Ownership. What does decentralized command mean for a business?
Decentralized command is you empowering your team to be able to lead, right? And that sounds great, and that's something we'd all want, but how do you do that? Because what I don't want is I don't want everyone just going and leading, right? They're all doing their own thing. They're like, hey, I'm leading, I'm doing my own thing. No, it needs to fall in line with what the actual mission is. Like, what do you need them to do? Right. So let's, and I task you with going and doing something, Sam. Right. And I'm like, hey, Sam, I need you to set up a sniper overwatch on building Alpha. Right. And you're like, okay, cool. You've done that multiple times. So you and your team go up there, and on that rooftop, instead of the nice big thick walls that provide cover and concealment, like most rooftops in Iraq had, there's nothing, right? It's completely flat. You're exposed, and you're like, oh, dude, this rooftop sucks. And you're like, well, JP told me to set up an overwatch, so what are you going to do? You're probably going to set up an overwatch, right? So you and your team, they lay down. You're irritated. Your team's irritated because you're exposed to all the other buildings, all the other windows, all the other rooftops out there. There's some pushback back and forth. And, like you get frustrated eventually and you come over the radio and you're like, hey, JP, I'm up on the rooftop like you wanted me to, but there's no cover. There's no concealment. Like, we're exposed, man. And I'm dealing with all these other things going on, right? So now I'm kind of irritated, right? And I'm like, all right, Sam, is there anything you can hide behind? And you're like, well, no, that's what, like I just told you, there's nothing to hide behind. You're like, and then I say, okay, is there anything that you can grab from downstairs to bring upstairs? And you're like, well, yeah, I mean, there's some stuff, but that stairwell is really tight and it's going to be hard for me to bring everything up the stairwell. You guys see how ridiculous this quickly can get, right? And I'm sure you're laughing and smiling because there's been similar situations like this where, there's this back and forth. Well, what do you want me to do? Can you do this? Well, no, I can't do this. And it's like both parties start to get frustrated. Well, the problem is I just told you what you needed to do, Sam. I didn't tell you why. And when you give somebody the why, it allows them to think of different options on accomplishing their goal. Because if something changes along the way, you can still adapt what you're doing and how you're doing it to get that why. So I have to give you the why. And the powerful thing is when you give somebody the why, like this is why I need you to go do this, it allows them to come up with the how, right? I don't want to dictate the how. If you need help creating how you're going to do it, yeah, as a leader, that's what I should be doing. But my goal is always to give it back to you. Like, all right, Sam, hey, this is what you need to be doing. Here's why we need to be doing it. How are you going to do that? And when I did that, what did I do? I gave you ownership, right? And the difference between a good leader and a bad leader, like you were talking about earlier, said, hey, what are the two differences? The other thing that I forgot to even answer is good leaders take ownership. Bad leaders, they cast blame, they make excuses, they don't take ownership, right? And so as a leader, if I can give you ownership, now this is not me pushing it off, but if I can give you ownership, I'm empowering you to step up and lead. And that's how decentralized command slowly starts to work within an organization. And so I tell you what, the why, I help you create the how. And then so when you're like, all right, cool, we need to set up an overwatch because, there's going to be troops patrolling on the north side of the building. There's a road from the north where all the enemy fighters have been coming down. I have to have visibility in this sector and of that road. Roger that, right? And so I take it a little bit deeper and I actually have you brief that back to me. I say, all right, Sam, I want you to brief back to me what you and your team are going to be doing so that I can have a good understanding how I can support you. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything, right? And notice I'm taking ownership of this. I'm taking ownership of you briefing me on how I might have forgotten something, right? And so I disarm you. Because if I say, hey, show me what you're going to be doing, I want to make sure you're not all screwed up. That's a different conversation, right? And so there's this back and forth that needs to be done. We need to have the good conversations. And so you go out there, you go up to that rooftop, there's no wall. You can say, hey guys, bring it back downstairs. You find a north-facing window in a room that allows you to see this sector and that road to the north. You get your machine gunners and your snipers put up in place. Have you accomplished what I needed you to accomplish? Yeah. The only difference is you're not on the rooftop. You're in a different window. So you just need to let me know that you moved positions.
Yeah.
I don't care that you switched up the plan. I just need to be updated so that I have situational awareness of what's going on. And so decentralized command works when the first 3 laws of combat are applied, right? Cover, move, simple, and prioritize and execute. And it comes down to communication. All these laws of combat are tied into communication. Leadership is tied into communication. Good communication makes the difference in every organization.
Yeah. How do you, I mean, it seems like that why is such an important part, because without it, like you said, I don't know why it's important. I don't know what the deal is. So how important is that for you just in life in general? Is maybe it's not in a situation, but maybe just your why of becoming a SEAL, of why of pursuing success now. How has that been important to you?
Yeah, the why drives everything that we do.
True.
Like you should always have your why clearly established in everything that you do, right? So when I got out of the military, the reason why I got out of the military was to be there with my wife and kids, right? And I had to understand that my mission had changed. When I got out of the military, I was no longer in the SEAL teams, obviously. And I was doing sales at a financial company. So the why behind what I was doing had shifted as well, right? I needed to be able to provide for my family. Now, how I did that, that was different now, right? It was flexible. And I was able to do sales. I was able to be with a good company and learn from some great coworkers and some great bosses, and had some bad bosses as well that I learned, hey, this is how I don't want to act in business, and this is what I don't want to do, right? So there's all these things that are going to happen in your life, but they're all driven by your why. Why do you want to be successful in business, right? And if it's a self-serving thing, okay. But I can promise you that's not going to be as strong as a reason that serves others. And if your why can be based around serving and supporting other people, that's going to be strong, because that's what drives people to go to the next level. Because if it's about you, you'll make excuses, you'll quit, you'll find reasons as to why you don't need to do it, right? And you'll shift. But when people have a mission and a purpose that's greater than themselves, when they're actively trying to serve other people, that's what puts them up at the top percentage of people.
Yeah. Another thing you talk about a lot is the mission first mindset.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's very similar. It's along the lines of what we were talking about with the why, right? And so once I've established my why, okay, what's my mission? What is my new mission? And everything I do needs to support that mission. You know, I have on my whiteboard, my reminder is to be a great husband, father, friend, and member of Echelon Front. So everything that I do needs to support those things, right? And if I'm doing anything and it doesn't support me being a great husband, a great father, a great friend, and a great member of Echelon Front, I don't need to be doing that. That doesn't serve me. It doesn't build me up, and it doesn't serve those that I'm looking to serve, right? And so these are reminders that you have to have. You have to maintain, like, what is your mission? And you have to maintain that in the front of your thoughts. Like, that's what's driving you. That's what's pushing you. And that's the reason why I say mission first mindset is because people tend to forget what their mission is and why they're out there doing what they're doing. And that's when they allow distractions to come in. I mean, Sam and I have a lot of common friends that are very successful, very successful. Do you think they've reached that success by being distracted and pulled in all these different directions? No, they are focused on what they need to be doing in life. They always know what their mission needs to be. Now, does that mean that your mission can't change? No, it's going to change, right? When I switched out of the military, my mission changed. And the struggles that I had with my transition out of the military was because I didn't switch my mindset as to what my new mission was, why it was so important, and how I needed to accomplish it.
That's one thing I remember hearing about Jocko is he said when he came back from Iraq and he was in charge of training, he kept thinking like, this doesn't matter, combat does. And he realized that he never changed that mission to him, and like, this does matter, and whatever he's doing does matter. So I love that. I love that you touched on that. I love that touch. How many deployments did you do?
Just 3.
Just 3? Okay.
Just 3. It's just,
Well, I say that because I have buddies that have like 10 combat deployments, 11 combat deployments, right? There's some guys in the teams that have deployed like 13 or 14 times since, the war in Afghanistan and then Iraq kicked off. So three's not a lot.
Well, you've seen some stuff. If you guys don't know, he was Chris Kyle's counterpart. You were in Delta Platoon, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So, can you tell us, what it was actually like being in Ramadi? What were some of those situations, and did you ever have any close calls, and what were you feeling in that? How do you keep your mindset focused?
Yeah. Ramadi was wild. It was crazy. Like we called it the not just we, but everybody called Ramadi the Wild Wild West because that's how crazy it was. I mean, guys were getting into gunfights every single day. When we showed up to replace a SEAL task unit and started working with the 228, their National Guard unit out of Pennsylvania. They had been there for 14 months and they had been in combat every single day for 14 months. 94 soldiers and Marines had been killed in action. Over 300 had been wounded, and they controlled less than a third of the city. And so, that's what it was like, and the leadership from the task unit we were replacing told us like, hey, if you go into that area, if you go into that, center of the city and all this bad area, you're going to get most of your guys wounded, if not killed. Like, don't go there. And our leadership was like, okay, well, that's where we're going. not because they wanted anybody to be wounded or killed, obviously, but what do you accomplish from sitting on the sidelines? Absolutely nothing. If you want to win the game, you actually have to step foot on the field and take action.
I love that.
We knew sitting around was going to do nothing. And there were soldiers and Marines that were going out there every single day. So who the hell are we just to sit on the side and watch, right? Now that the mission that we were doing wasn't the typical Navy SEAL mission, but it was a mission that needed to be accomplished. And so we just knew that, hey, we need to get into the fight. And that's what we started doing. And it was completely different than what we had done in training because we don't do daytime urban warfare patrols, right? We don't patrol through the streets going from building to building to building. Like, that's not what we do. We come in at night, we go hit a target where there's a high value target or, a capture kill mission. We go in, we do our stuff, we leave. That's what we do. And now all of a sudden it's like, cool, we're going to be patrolling through the streets, going from building to building, clearing out Ramadi. That's what we were doing. We were clearing out Ramadi of all the enemy fighters, fighting from building to building, bro. And so it was crazy. And so we knew that we could support this idea and plan from the Army. The 118 came in a month later. They replaced the 228. They brought in these tanks, these soldiers. It was incredible, right, to be able to work alongside these guys. And, as we're just clearing through these areas to build up these combat outposts in the city, which is like a fortified living and fighting position so that we could plant our flag, we could show those insurgent fighters we weren't leaving. And more importantly, we could work with the local populace to tell them, hey, we're here to support you. And so, it was gunfights and combat every single day. Whether we were patrolling the streets or up on a rooftop providing a sniper overwatch, it was every single day just in the heat, getting after it, trying to find a way to work. So, I mean, it was difficult. Like I said, like, that deployment was much more difficult than combat, right? I'm sorry, than Hell Week. Combat is much more difficult than Hell Week or Buds ever is, because you're in a controlled environment in Buds. You get to go back and sleep in your bed at night, right? And so there's a lot of times we were sleeping on rooftops and sleeping in courtyards of buildings that we had taken over before we did our clearance to the next area. And so it was a completely different environment. There's a lot of close calls. I mean, anytime you're in a gunfight, it's a close call, right? And when someone's actively shooting at you, we had enemy snipers that were in that area that were very good at what they did. There's a lot of times that those rounds would crack right past your head, right over your head. We started shooting out of these loopholes. So we built these loophole charges where we'd blow a hole on that wall and it would allow us to kind of see through that, right? So we'd be back off that wall. Our sniper rifle would be scanning, looking through there. And there's times that a round would come through that loophole or hit that loophole and just, you know, explode that wall in front of you from an enemy sniper. And so, you know, there's a lot of close calls like that, man.
I
But
remember I was hearing your speech that you gave at First Form Summer Smash, and you were talking about this when you're on a rooftop and you were aiming at the
You went to
driver.
that?
No, I watched it on YouTube.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
go, but you were aiming at this driver of a Humvee, I think it was, something like that. When you're of a car, when you're in that situation, are you thinking about anything else, or is it just laser focus on, like, talk to me about what goes on in your head?
you're just in that flow state. You're in that zone because that's all you are doing. And if you allow distractions to creep in, man, you're going to fail at doing what you need to do. And what I'm about to say could be taken the wrong way, right? But when you're operating at a high level, you have to be able to have the ability to completely dial it in. And when we were in Ramadi, we were operating at a high level, right? We just were. We were just, man, it was like we were in a different zone and different level of ability, right? And so when you watch that video, that shot that I took, that was a headshot through a windshield on a moving vehicle. That's a difficult shot to take because you're having to calculate the distance changing. Also, when you shoot through a windshield, it changes the trajectory of your bullet. And so you have to calculate all these things in. I don't have the exact distance of that guy, right? So I have my 300-yard hold. So I'm having to do an offset hold, calculate for the moving speed, and also for shooting into that windshield. And so if I was to be thinking about anything else, I'm not making that shot. And there was times that guys, we would have to take shots on guys that were holding kids, using them as human shields. You have to be dialed in on that shot. You know, that's a headshot, and you can't miss on that, right? And when you're identifying enemy combatants based off of like something being hidden under, you know, their clothes, or they're having a radio, or they have an AK slung underneath them, or a suicide vest, right, underneath their clothes, and you're able to identify that because the breeze pushed their clothes against them and you saw the outline of a suicide vest. You better fucking be damn straight that you're taking the right shot, because you shoot somebody that isn't armed, that doesn't have a suicide vest on, you're going to prison. That's going to happen. And so we have to be dialed in. And I'm sorry I cussed. I didn't mean to.
Oh, man, we're good. We're good, man.
I know, but I didn't mean to, right? But you know, it's just one of those things that you have to be in the zone. You have to be completely dialed in.
You learned. I'm sorry. I know you learned so many lessons. You learned, you know, being in Navy SEALs, and you applied to life. But if you had to choose one, what would be the biggest lesson that you learned in Navy SEALs that you can apply to life?
Don't be afraid of hard work.
Love it. Love it. Embrace the suck.
Yeah.
Right? Embrace the suck, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I still to this day, like when we're doing like hard work or crappy work, I like that.
You like suffering, right?
Yeah.
I love it. You know, it's kind of weird, man. It's kind of like the mental thing, you know?
No, I do. I love it because you know what? It means that I'm doing something that a lot of other people wouldn't want to do. And guess what that is, man? That's my ego. That's 100% my ego, knowing that I'm doing something that most people wouldn't want to do. That's why I take ice baths. I take ice baths for recovery, but also I take ice baths just for the pure mental aspect of like, man, this really sucks.
Yeah.
Like, this really sucks, you know, or, you know, that's why I like jujitsu. Jiu-jitsu is extremely humbling, and it's hard work, right? When you're, you know, just getting smashed by a bigger upper belt, like that sucks, right? And, you know, it's just one of those things where I like putting myself in situations where I'm going to have to grind through it. I'm going to have to work through it because that's challenging me as an individual. And then there's also the aspect of like, okay, well, hey, if I'm doing this, could it inspire somebody else?
Yeah.
could have inspired somebody else.
Because I mean, I believe that the key to success is embracing the suck and doing things that get you out of comfort zone. I always said that over the years, we become, you know, people who push themselves become comfortable being uncomfortable, you know, and they're uncomfortable when they're comfortable, you know, and over the years, when I'm sitting down on a couch, I'm like, this sucks, man. I feel like I need to do something to push myself. Like, let's do something. Let's go for a.
But there's also a balance to that, right? You know, like you're successful, you've done a lot of stuff, you know, that's why Jocko talks about discipline equals freedom, right? Like if you have what you've wanted to accomplish out of your life, okay, you can be a little more casual and relaxed on what you do, right? But if you haven't accomplished all those things, like what are you doing wasting time, right? And I think people now, if you can also take what I just said and take that to a different level and say, well, true successful people, they accomplish their goals and then they get a new one, right? And they get one that's harder and just it's going to be a little more difficult to obtain. And that's a great thing. We should all be applying that, right? But there needs to also be a balance in taking care of ourselves, right? And so you have to reward yourself, right? You have to reward yourself when you're hitting these milestones, you know, like, you know, taking time for yourself to recharge so that you can go out there and actually hit it harder and smarter, like the next time that you're going out there trying to get after it, right? So there you have to find the balance. But I mean, you look at anybody that's successful, and if you were to truly dive in and break down what they've done to accomplish what they've gotten, there's not a lot of comfort there. There's a lot of discomfort. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of heartache. There's a lot of sorrow. There's a lot of just disappointment, right? But you have to keep grinding through that. And, you know, I know we're right up at our time. And, you know, the last thing I'll kind of finish with the people is, you know, you have to remind yourself that your worst day is somebody's dream.
So true. Yes.
Your worst day is somebody's dream. And so when you're grinding, you're working hard, you're going through all these different things in life, understand that somebody out there would love to have the things that you're complaining about. They would love those problems. And so I use that as a reminder. Like when I'm getting frustrated or I'm starting to feel sorry for myself, I'm like, you know what? Somebody would love to be in this position. And I'm going to push myself to get out of this position so I can be in a better situation to impact and serve more people. And if you can have your focus of impacting and serving other people, you're going to get what you want out of life.
Yeah, I love that, man. That was an amazing way to wrap up. Thank you so much, JP, honestly.
JP, you're the man. I took so much out of this. It was amazing. I mean, I was just like, wow, yes, yow, yes. I was like in church. Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Man, well, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for tuning in. Definitely go follow JP. Are you at JP Dinnell on Instagram and everything?
Yeah, so Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it's at JP Dinnell. So JP, D as in David, INNELL. So that's on all platforms. And then obviously, you know, Echelon Front is the leadership management consulting company that Jocko and Leif created that I work for. And, you know, we're at echelonfront.com. So that's ECHELON front.com. And that's the website. And then at that on all the social media platforms. So,
hey guys, if you like today's episode, do me a huge favor. Go ahead and leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, leave me a review, and tag a few friends that you think can benefit from what we shared today. Really appreciate it. God bless.